He lived in the lap of luxury, a lavish lifestyle funded by the most insidious trickery. He targeted victims of medical negligence and stole their monies. This really is a story of systemic failure. So these children were born with severe disabilities, some of them with cerebral palsy, unable to look after themselves and in need of specialized care for the rest of their lives. Many of them came from far-flung villages with little resources and information, places like Tsolo and Ngobo in the Eastern Cape. This is where Zuko Nonxuba found his hunting ground. Who would care if he stole money from these families, these nobodies? The state paid out millions to the families of these children. Most of them never saw a red cent. And when Zuko Nonxuba felt moved, he might hand out a few thousand here and there, but most had no idea that his millionaire lifestyle was being funded from their suffering. The body that was meant to oversee him and other lawyers is the Legal Practice Council. And we're joined now by Gauteng Director Ignatius Briel. Ignatius, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Morning, Bongani.
We're talking, of course, because Nonxuba has finally been struck of the role he may no longer practice as an attorney in South Africa.
That's right.
It follows a long road and a list of accusations and 600 million rand in estimated medical negligence claims since 2014, yet many of the victims never saw a red cent.
That's right. No, it's absolutely despicable what has happened here. The amount that he's actually taken from these victims, we've not yet been able to fully ascertain. So it is somewhere between 200 and 600 million that he's misappropriated.
I mean, he hired people, as I understand it, to comb villages in rural Eastern Cape to look for children with disabilities, particularly things like cerebral palsy. And he obviously hoped that some of those were as a result of medical negligence. He would then offer these families to sue on their behalf, and whatever the state paid out, he generally would pocket.
That seems to have been the case. What we've also found out, what he did when we started investigating the complaints, he would threaten the victim or the families of the victims, because what he would do is pay them small monthly stipends. And as you indicated, a lot of these families are really destitute, poor families in rural areas, for whom this is almost their entire monthly income. And he threatened them that if they were to testify against him, that he would stop paying that monthly stipend.
Now, dipping into trust accounts is particularly egregious for lawyers.
Absolutely. That's probably the worst transgression an attorney can make.
I've got to ask you the question, Ignatius. I mean, I first saw this story on Carte Blanche some years ago. Did you hold this individual to account?
We did. I think, unfortunately, it took way too long. But if you've read the judgment that came out from the Western Cape High Court, the judge actually indicates how Mr. Nonxuba had used every possible attempt to delay the matter. The initial application brought against Nonxuba was in 2021 already. From that stage on, we started with an interdict to prevent him from using his trust account. And at every step, he would bring in reviews, he would bring appeals. I think the judge in the Western Cape actually mentioned that over the span of the prosecution against Nonxuba, there were over 17 judges involved. This just gives you an indication of the extent that he's gone to abuse the legal system to prevent accountability.
I mean, that makes the law an ass.
He's tried. He's failed finally.
Here's my difficulty. I mean, I know you mentioned the complaints from 2021, but we know already, of course, as I say, I think the total amount of what he's tried to sue for from the Eastern Cape is almost R1 billion. I'm not saying he got all of that, but certainly a huge chunk of the monies that were paid as a result of his litigation has all but crippled that department, and the Eastern Cape Treasury, the SIU, the Western Cape Department of Health, all of them laid complaints against Nonxuba, some of them as early as 2018, yet not much action was taken.
That is unfortunately true. I think part of the difficulty that we had was the transition from the old law societies to the Legal Practice Council, which took place in 2018. And in that transitional period, there was a hiatus of almost a year where there was uncertainty about which act to apply when proceeding against practitioners. So as much as for the victims, this is not an excuse at all. It is a factor that played a role. But as I indicated, the actions by the practitioner himself, and which is what we find in most of our disciplinary matters, where practitioners use all kinds of tactics to delay finalization of matters. You will also note, and this is not a criticism against the Departments of Health, but you will note from the judgment where the court actually indicates that we were in the process of dealing with this matter when there were intervention applications brought by the departments, which then also, added to the delay in terms of the legal processes.
I hear what you're saying, but I mean, I remember, as I said, I first saw this on Carte Blanche, where many of the victims first heard about the amounts they'd been awarded via the media. It was the Carte Blanche presenter and producer who were telling them for the first time. And so even though you say that there were some interventions and investigations, these families were not contacted by you. In fact, it took a team of private lawyers to at least try to apply for a sequestration hearing in order to try to get to the money. As you know, justice denied is justice. Justice delayed is justice denied.
No, that's absolutely true. I do think, however, as much as the team of private lawyers had a role to play in this, what needs to be mentioned is that the LPCA had been working together with the SIU and the Hawks in investigating this. So most of these families had actually been contacted by the SIU before they even contacted the private lawyers. And that's how most of them became aware of the money that had been paid to them. In terms of the sequestration application that those lawyers attempted to bring, as much as I think that was the appropriate thing for them to do, the end result was that the court said that they cannot bring such an application. The families have, in the meantime, received offers from the Legal Practitioners Fidelity Fund, and they will at least receive a portion of their money. The regrettable thing is that the cover from the Legal Practitioners Fidelity Fund is limited to 5 million.
I mean, there was one case of a boy who died, who had been awarded 24 million rand, and after the child died, Nonxuba allegedly told the family, but the money was for the child, and that family never saw a red cent of it. And I suppose when you talk about the Fidelity Fund, I've got to ask you, is there a way for the LPC to keep track of what lawyers do with these trust accounts? Because what's the point of a fidelity certificate if there isn't?
So part of the process that we follow every year is to have audits submitted by independent auditors to verify that the trust account had been operated in accordance with the legislation. Now, what needs to be said is that Nonxuba had submitted clean audits up until the time that we actually brought the applications against him. Now, the difficulty that we sit with this is that we need to rely on somebody who's called an independent auditor who's registered with a regulatory body, IRBA, and then who becomes complicit in this kind of misconduct. So that auditor has in fact been reported to IRBA, and we're really hoping for some swift action against him.
But didn't he also submit, as part of that, redacted bank statements? Wasn't that a clue?
No, the redacted bank statements only came later when we started the legal proceedings against him.
So where does this leave victims? I mean, he's been struck off the roll. Will they ever get any of that money? Will there be criminal proceedings against this lawyer?
They should get the amount that the LPFF offers. I think you might recall that in previous interviews we indicated that there was difficulty with some of the claims to confirm veracity of the claims. I think most of those claims have now been confirmed, and it's now up to the LPFF just to finalize their insurance processes to make the offers. In terms of the criminal proceedings, these are ongoing, and I can assure you that the legal team from the NPA who's involved there is quite senior, and there's a very big focus on bringing this matter before criminal court very soon.
Last question. Hand on your heart. Are you proud of how the LPC has handled this matter?
I think we could have done better. But again, there's difficulties in all of these matters, and I'm only hoping that in future we can do better and much quicker.
Ignatius Briel, who is the Legal Practice Council, Gauteng Director.
Current events, developing stories,
tough questions.
Your voice making a difference.
This is Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa.